The Zephyrian High Council had made their decision with characteristic arrogance. Ambassador Velthar stood before the assembled representatives of a dozen galactic civilizations, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's ambient light as he delivered what he believed to be a merciful verdict. The species known as humans shall be exempt from military conscription, he announced, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his people. Our analysis indicates they lack the necessary physiological and psychological fortitude for proper warfare. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Karathians nodded their massive armored heads in approval. The telepathic Mindari projected waves of smug satisfaction. Even the warrior-bred Thraken seemed pleased with the assessment. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's sole representative in the Galactic Defense Alliance, sat motionless in her designated corner. At barely 5 feet tall and weighing less than most alien children, she understood why they had reached their conclusion. Humans were physically weak compared to most galactic species. No natural armor, no venomous appendages, no ability to phase through matter or manipulate gravity with thought alone. Furthermore, Velthar continued, humans demonstrate an alarming tendency toward emotional decision-making and irrational attachment to individual lives. Such weaknesses make them unsuitable for the calculated brutality required in our conflict against the Devourers. The Devourers. Sarah suppressed a shudder. The extragalactic swarm had already consumed 17 star systems, converting all biological matter into more of their kind. The Alliance's conventional warfare, surgical strikes, honor duels, and territorial exchanges had proven laughably inadequate against an enemy that viewed entire worlds as food. "We accept your decision," Sarah said quietly, her words barely audible in the vast chamber. The aliens seemed surprised she had spoken at all. Most regarded humans as barely sentient, useful only for their unusual ability to interface with ancient technologies that other species found incomprehensible. 6 months later, the Devourers broke through the Alliance's third defensive line. Admiral Korthvex of the Thraken fleet paced his command deck, his forearms gesticulating wildly as reports flooded in from across the front. "Impossible! How did they adapt so quickly to our plasma bombardments?" His tactical officer, a Mindari whose mental projections flickered with panic, struggled to maintain composure. "Sir, they're not just adapting, they're learning. Every tactic we use, every weapon system we deploy, becomes useless within hours." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Alliance had been fighting a civilized war, using established protocols refined over millennia. Limited orbital bombardments, ground forces with clear rules of engagement, respect for civilian populations. It was how proper species conducted conflict. But the Devourers didn't care about propriety. They consumed everything. Warriors, civilians, even the dead. They turned entire planets into sprawling hive ships, their biomass growing exponentially with each victory. "Contact the humans," Korthvex growled, surprising his bridge crew. "Perhaps their unconventional thinking might provide insight." The response came not from Dr. Chen, but from someone identifying themselves as General Marcus Reed, speaking from something called the Pentagon. "Admiral Korthvex," Reed's voice was steady, almost casual. "We've been monitoring your situation. We'd like to offer our assistance." "Assistance?" The Admiral's translator struggled with the human's emotional undertones. "Your species was deemed unfit for military service." "Yes, we heard." There was something unsettling in the human's tone. Not anger, but something far more dangerous. Tell me, Admiral, in all your civilized wars, have you ever faced an enemy that showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and viewed your entire species as nothing more than resources to be consumed? Well, no. Such behavior would be uncivilized. Yes, barbaric even. Reed's voice carried an odd note of satisfaction. Admiral, you've been fighting with kid gloves against an enemy that wants to eat your children. Would you like to learn how humans fight when everything we love is threatened? 3 days later, Korthvex watched in horrified fascination as human ships arrived at the contested Rigel system. They were crude things by galactic standards, metal shells propelled by chemical rockets, armed with primitive kinetic weapons and nuclear devices that most species had abandoned centuries ago. The humans didn't announce their presence. They didn't demand surrender or issue warnings. They simply began their work. The first indication of their methods came when Devourer bioships started dying in ways that defied understanding. The humans had weaponized viruses, not the sophisticated nanoconstructs that advanced species used, but actual biological agents designed with one purpose: to consume Devourer tissue faster than it could regenerate. But that was just the beginning. Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the communication array, and Korthvex was struck by how different she sounded from the quiet academic who had sat in council chambers months ago. Admiral, our species has a concept called total war. It means that every resource, every citizen, every piece of technology is dedicated to the complete destruction of the enemy. We don't fight for territory or honor. We fight for extinction, theirs or ours. The human fleet began deploying weapons that made the Admiral's combat-hardened crew physically ill. Dimensional bombs that folded space itself into crushing singularities. Temporal mines that trapped Devourer ships in recursive time loops until their biological components aged to dust. Quantum viruses that unraveled the fundamental forces holding Devourer biomass together. This is madness, Korthvex whispered, as he watched an entire Devourer hive ship simply cease to exist, its atoms scattered across 17 dimensions simultaneously. No, Sarah replied, and the Admiral could hear the cold smile in her voice. This is what humans do when someone threatens our home. You called us weak because we cry when our soldiers die, because we form emotional attachments, because we make irrational decisions based on love and fear and hope. On the tactical display, the Devourer presence in the Rigel system was simply gone, not destroyed, erased, as if it had never existed. You forgot that those same emotions drive us to heights of creativity and depths of ruthlessness that your logical, civilized minds can't comprehend. We don't just fight wars. We solve the problem of our enemy's existence. 3 months later, the Devourers were extinct. Not defeated, not driven back. Extinct. Humanity had done what the combined might of the Galactic Alliance could not. They had made an entire species unhappen. The High Council reconvened in emergency session, but this time the humans weren't sitting in the corner. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, no longer the quiet observer, but something far more terrifying. A representative of a species that had casually committed xenocide and called it pest control. We believe, she said with the same soft voice that had once seemed so harmless, that our application for full Alliance membership should be reconsidered. The vote was unanimous.